this is going to be Newman's Micro Matcher. It's a great Baetis nymph pattern. Kind of fun to tie too. It's got all sorts of different unique aspects to it. I believe it's called Newman's because it's named after Newman from Seinfeld. Newman. It's not true. I just made that up. You can say whatever you want. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So I'm starting out with some sheer 14/0 thread. 16, size 16, extra long hook in my vise. And I did start the thread a little bit back, and I'm going to use that as kind of a measuring point to make sure that I don't let the abdomen get too much further ahead of that and keep the proportions on the fly that I want. So we're going to start out tying in tails. This being in Baetis, we're going to do 3 tails, and I'm just using some Micro Fibbetts here. I'm not too worried about them being lined up because when we finish the pattern, we're going to cut them to length. So I'm not as concerned about how long they are at this point as much as I am just concerned about making sure I keep them on the top of the shank of the hook here as we tie down. I'm going to tie those back to about where the back of the barb of the hook would be. I've smashed the barb down like I usually do. So we've got it about like that. And one of the things you're supposed to do with this pattern, which I abysmally failed on this one, was to save the tag end of my thread, but that's okay. I'll just grab a different piece. Right at this point, all I'm doing is kind of pushing these 3 tails up. Hopefully you can see those 3 tails there. I'm going to use that piece of thread here to try to surround the middle fibbet there. I don't want to pull it overly tight. It will actually just pull right off. So you can kind of see that, and what that's going to do is it's going to help those things stay kind of splayed out, and that's what we want on the tails, is that splay. Like I said, we will cut this to size. Once I've got that tag end in, I can actually tug on it a little bit, and it's going to spread those out even a little bit further. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to secure down that tag end. We still have the end of the Micro Fibbetts there, so I'm going to just come on in with my scissors and cut those off right about where I want the abdomen to end, so I can just kind of leverage that bulk as I'm tying this pattern. I'm just going to wrap those down, secure them to the shank of the hook. Clean things up a little bit, and we're going to travel back down the shank of the hook a little ways, and we're going to tie in a piece of brassy size silver wire. I'm going to tie the silver wire here on the lens side of the hook. I'm going to use this for ribbing the pattern, and we are going to have a little bit of a taper, and the thread that we're using here is going to be the taper. That's why I've chosen the olive here, is because I want an olive-bodied fly in this particular case. I'm going to take that back to where I want that ribbing to start. I will take a look from the side, which I always do, because oftentimes you'll find that you miss covering up some of the silver wire or the material you're tying, because you can only see the side of the hook that's facing you. You're not necessarily seeing the side that's facing the lens. And with that, we're just going to do some thread work. So once I've got the taper about where I want it, I'll go ahead and grab that piece of silver wire, and we're going to just create some open wraps moving up that thread body. I may have them get a little bit wider and gap as they kind of move up. Not a lot, just a hint of that. so it better mimics kind of the ribbing on the bug itself. Take that right up here. We're going to throw our thread over here a couple of times to secure that silver wire in place. Take a few thread wraps beyond it, and we'll just use our good old-fashioned helicopter friction to break that silver wire. So now that we're at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just throw in a couple of turn whip finish, because I am going to switch from here over to a black thread. So that will secure our olive. We're done working with our olive thread. We'll set that aside and our whip finisher aside. Grab our black bobbin with thread, and I'm just going to restart just like I was starting on a new fly, right here behind the eye and right where we ended with our olive thread. Reach up and grab our tag end here and cut it off. Now with our black thread attached, I've got a 1/8 inch piece of black Scud Back that we're going to use for a wing case here. So I just wanted to get this attached to our hook here, primarily just focusing on keeping it on top of the shank of the hook. So I'm going to go ahead and take a few wraps backwards. I'm just going to kind of hold that material upwards and straight back just to help make sure that we keep that. I'm going to look from time to time underneath because I want to maintain those proportions body proportions we set up at the very beginning. And that's about right where I want the thorax to start and the abdomen to end. So for this next piece, we're going to be doing a series of patches of dubbing as we tie in some legs. And I'm using Superfine. I'm using brown. I've seen others use gray. Just kind of whatever might happen to be in your area. Probably want to tie up some of each. And I'm going to build up a nice little dubbing ball right back here at this point. And then I'm going to turn to a new material that I found, which is really an awesome material. It's called Senyo Shaggy Dub. I'm using kind of a medium brown here, and these are going to be the legs. So I'm going to want to grab 3 fibers, and even though it says dub, and I know it is dubbing, it's very elasticy kind of material. So just be aware of that. So I'm just going to take these one at a time. Got one piece here. I'm going to go ahead and secure that piece to the top of the shank of the hook here, so that I have one side of those legs sticking out one side, one sticking out the other side. So I'm just going to tie a little bit of a figure 8 here just to secure both and keep them both on their own sides of the hook. And with that, I'm going to kind of hold both of them backwards a little bit as I take a few thread wraps back, and that's going to hold these kind of in place and outward. So hopefully you can kind of see what that's starting to look like there, and get them kind of situated where I want them. And then I'm just going to go back to my dubbing, grab myself another little pinch of Superfine in the brown. And what you'll see is this is going to start pushing those legs back. So there we go. We want to cover up the gaps so that you're not seeing the black through there. It's kind of like that. Take a wrap or two moving forward. So now we're going to grab this next set and I tie that down right in front of the last set of legs we had. Get a couple of wraps in there just to make sure it's nice and secure. Take one of those legs on the camera side and kind of fold it backwards a little bit. Do the same thing with the other side, except I'll be pulling it more towards me. I may take a figure 8 wrap or two just to kind of help keep those splayed out a little bit. And then we will add a little bit more of our dubbing. I think just about 2 more trips back to our dubbing and we'll be golden here. Or brown, I guess, because that's what color this says. So I want to make sure that those 2 additional legs are kind of back in position. We're going to cover up the black under the thread underneath. We'll see if we're happy with where we end up there. So here we're going down with that last set of legs. These nice rubbery legs. Make sure that they're kind of pointing backwards by wrapping over the top of them a little bit. I got a big mess of rubber legs going on here. Unfortunately for me, that's what we intended to do. So you can hopefully start seeing the mess that I have created here. And then I'm going to go ahead and just reach back and grab the tiniest little wisp for the last little bit of dubbing. Go ahead and get my thread kind of spread out there a little bit. And again, this dubbing is going to complete our thorax. It's also going to give us the side benefit of pushing those legs back a little bit. So we'll just kind of wrap back over the top of them with the dubbing. It's going to kind of hold those in place where I want them. And we should end up just a little bit ahead of, not quite exactly behind the eye, but pretty close to behind the eye of the hook. So once we get that far, I'm going to go ahead and take this thin skin black that we tied on before that was going to be our wing case, and now it is going to be our wing case. So I want to center that over the top of my hook and get that locked down. So it should be looking about like that, really rubbery and kind of a bit messy. I'm going ahead, take a few wraps on behind there. I'm going to fold it back and take a few thread wraps also right behind the eye. Back to here. And then I'm going to come in with my scissors. I'm going to stretch, give this just a little bit of a stretch, just so that it kind of ends up sucking that rubbery stuff back under those thread wraps. Then I can go ahead and set that aside. I can use that for another fly. Then I'm going to go ahead and finish this head off. Clean it up a little bit with a few thread wraps right behind the eye. Go ahead and give myself a little bit of extra thread. And we'll go ahead and come in with our whip finisher. And we will finish with our thread work. Got that nice and tight. Go in with my thread cutter. Alright, so we've got our mess. We've got our really incredibly long tails, and we've got all these stringy legs hanging out. I'm just going to come in with my scissors. I'm going to want those legs about the length of the abdomen. So I'm going to clip them off on one side. We'll do the same on this other side. So after our trimming on the legs, we've got a nice set of legs going on here. I'm going to come back to the back and I'm going to cut the tails off as well. And I want the tails to be just a little bit longer than the abdomen as well. This is a great pattern, great Baetis pattern. Really kind of a lot of fun to tie as well. So give it a shot.